There is a moment in every life when you decide to rise, to stand taller than your fear, to speak louder than your doubt, to chase the vision that sets your soul on fire. This is that moment. And here, we walk it together with stories that awaken, voices that inspire, and truths that set you free. This is Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald, where hope has a voice, and that voice is yours. And welcome to the show, everybody. Rochelle, how are you today, young lady?
I'm so good. I'm enjoying the rain, and it's my last day here in Utah before I take off to Colorado. And speaking of Colorado, in the Denver area is where our guest is today. We have Chris Natzke with us here, and he is all about the martial arts type of life path. And we have a lot to learn about that, don't we, Kevin?
We really do. And one of the things that he talks about is that when he was 10 years old, there was a few years ago, there was a guy by the name of David Carradine, and he had a show. It was called Kung Fu.
Mm-hmm.
And the first episode I saw of Kung Fu, now this is a little bit before your time, but the first episode I saw of Kung Fu was, I think it was a 2-hour movie to start with. And he did the philosophy and the martial arts abilities and all the things that he brought to it, and with his teachers and the man that he became, and it was a great series. And I know that Chris watched it too, didn't you, Chris?
I sure did. In fact, it was the impetus for me starting martial arts way back when.
Back in the 70s, I
Yes,
do believe.
1973.
Yes, indeed. Well, and you've been at it for 50 years. You are an 8th degree black belt, which I have no idea exactly what that means. I'm hoping that you'll tell us exactly what that means. You're in the top 1%. You're a Taekwondo champion. You're a coach, and you're a speaker. And at one time you had one of the top martial arts facilities in the entire United States. But I got to ask you, have you done anything worthwhile in your life?
I've been very blessed. I've been very blessed in my life. I've had a lot of great people supporting me throughout my career, regardless of which those careers that I was embarking upon. And it's just been great. And using martial arts as a vehicle and basically a way of life, if you will, not only in my martial art training and teaching, but also in my speaking career, has been a real blessing.
And it's more of a philosophy than it is a physical training.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, you talked about the idea of what does an 8th or 9th degree black belt mean. The way that I have always explained it, as it was taught to me, is if you think about the first 3 degrees of black belt, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd degree, those are basically the students and the fighters. And then when you get to 4th, 5th, and 6th degree, you're looking at more of the teachers. And from 7th to 9th degree, you're looking at the philosophers. So that is really the way that I kind of view my martial art career as well.
And the beautiful thing is that you can handle yourself, but that's not what this is about at all.
Right. No, it really isn't. And, having the confidence of knowing that you can protect yourself obviously moves into all other areas of your life. So the idea there is to use martial arts as a metaphor for your life. And so regardless of the situation you find you're in, personally, professionally, as you're moving through challenges, et cetera, you can always lean back onto those lessons and skills that you learn in martial art training, not necessarily the physical, but as you said, the philosophical, the things that help us on a very deep level inside of ourselves be able to express powerfully. Those are the attributes of martial arts, I think, that are most important.
And Rochelle, you're acquainted with martial arts, are you not?
Yeah, just a little bit. I did karate and stuff like that when I was younger, and my mom is a double black belt in jiu-jitsu, and I learned that it is not so much about the movements that you're doing, but the mentality that creates around the levels. Like as you move up levels with your body, your mental also grows with that. And it teaches amazing discipline, which is why I think it's so good for kids, right?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, one of the things that I will often tell my students is I'll say, do you think martial arts teaches discipline? And of course, they'll all raise their hands and I'll say, well, that's not really correct. What martial arts teaches is self-discipline. And so basically doing the right things, whether someone is watching or not. So hopefully what happens in a student's course of training is they learn those discipline type skills, but they just become part of their everyday life in the way that they show up in the world.
Yeah.
And it affects everything. Your family relationships, your business relationships, how you handle yourself in difficult situations, and how to get through them and have a really different philosophy than most people have.
No doubt. And, I used to, and I still say this, that the last time I was in a fight, I was in the 5th grade. Okay. But I use my martial arts every day of my life. So if it's not being, physical in terms of self-protection, it has to do with the philosophy. And, in our day and age today, there of course is violence that is out there, but most of us will never encounter a physical confrontation, statistically speaking. However, all of us will deal with negative thoughts, maybe people that have negative attitudes, are negative attitudes. So that self-defense, if you will, has a much broader perspective than just the physical component.
Yeah.
Because if you are confident in your abilities, it causes you to not have to react to things. You can respond appropriately.
In fact, that's the exact distinction that I make, is there's a difference between reacting and responding. And so many times, if you think about your own lives, the times that we reacted in a situation probably wasn't our best way that we showed up, right? It came from an emotional component. All of a sudden, we're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that or I did that. But when we're able to assess a situation, get into our breath, assess what's happening, and then respond, it's usually the best avenue for all concerned.
I've always looked at it. Oh, go ahead,
Sorry,
Michelle.
go ahead, Ken. I was going to say, just when it comes to emotions, regulating emotions is like enough in itself, but how exactly does that tie into that? Like, why does it help that so much?
Well, I think number one is that when you're training, there are a plethora of emotions that come up. I mean, there are times that you may be angry with an opponent. There might be times when you have fear and you don't think you get through a certain situation. Maybe you're in front of a board of master instructors and you're testing for a higher rank. So there's all those types of emotions that come. And one of our key attributes of Taekwondo, we call them the Taekwondo tenets, is self-control. So being able to be in a situation, understand your emotions. And what I want to say is emotions aren't bad. When we feel anger, when we feel fear, those are natural reactions of our body and our mind. But the fact of the matter is we hopefully don't stay there. We're able to feel them, release them, assess the situation, and then move forward powerfully.
Perfect.
When we look at the difference between reacting and responding, I used to, when I was younger, if somebody got mad at me, I would react in a negative way with them rather than responding is taking a step back. In my opinion, I'd love your opinion on this. Responding is taking a step back and saying, why is this person angry? Why am I having the reaction of being angry back? How is that serving me? And certainly isn't serving him. Is that kind of a good explanation?
It's a very good explanation. That's kind of how I view it as well, Kevin. It's, when negative energy is coming toward us, or a situation that causes fear, anxiety, again, those initial feelings that we get are basically there for self-protection and preservation. When we feel the fear, we're startled, the adrenal response. But the more that you're able to exist in that and have the experience of that, now you know that it can be used as a tool. So when you're adrenalized in a situation and you recognize it, you know how to navigate it. Now it becomes a way of directing your energy, giving you additional power. We've all heard of fight and flight. But what most of us do in bad situations, whether they're physically dangerous or it's just someone is being aggressive toward us, we go to freeze. And if you don't think you have that attribute, think about the last time you were in maybe a verbal confrontation with someone and you got to a point where you didn't know what to say. And then you were driving home and you said, oh my gosh, I should have said this and I should have said that, right? Because in that time of being adrenalized, your brain shuts down. And the more that you're able to have those situations in your training, you understand how to work with them versus have them be a detriment to you.
You know, one of the things that is going on a lot in our world right now, and I'm so proud of Rochelle how she handled this particular situation, because road rage is a thing. And tell us about the story that you had from last week or something, that somebody was really mad at you, and on that one.
Yeah, so I mean, the speed limit was already 40 miles an hour, right? We're going 50. And when you've been in bad situations, sometimes you're a little more careful than you used to be. I used to love going faster. I go 90 miles an hour. I don't care what the speed limit is, but I kind of grew up a little bit and realized that I'm afraid of that. And so we're already going with the flow of traffic, which is 10 miles over. And there's this car that I noticed behind me that had took the left and was in the car behind me and was just getting angry, going, you can see him going back and forth, and somebody got over too slow and he got mad and he sped up. And the next thing I know, he's behind the car next to me, and then he's behind me. And usually, I mean, what is your first reaction as a human? It's like, oh, you want to give me this? You want to see, like, and I thought to myself, I could be the reason he still doesn't get through traffic, because me and the other person were at the very front when the light changed. And usually I'll take off. I love just getting out of the way, getting up to the speed limit. And I thought to myself, I could make him learn some patience or something like that. And we're pulling off to go over to the right, and once again he is behind me, so we take the right, and I decided to just get over into the other lane so that he could go around, do whatever he was going to do, because I didn't need to be involved in that, and I also didn't need to feed that back because I'm reciprocating it. So he gets over all crazy, cuts in front of me, and then gets way over far into the left lane and turns into the hospital. And I even felt like, for a moment, like I wanted to almost to be upset with myself. Like, why didn't you just get out of the way sooner? Or why didn't you think about that? Or why were you in your own world so stuck? And why were you even worried about the fact that he was in a hurry? You've been that person before too. Just get out of the way. And it was humbling. And I thought about all those other people around him that he had people. If they were outside of their car, there probably would have been some fist swinging. And he was making everybody so mad. And I just decided, no, right in that moment, I'm not going to be this. I'm not going to feed into it. I don't want this. He clearly needs to get out of the way for whatever reason that is. And his wife could have been having a baby, and all of us are just like, just you don't know somebody's going through. You don't need be the person to make it worse either. And sometimes just slow down and get out of your own head and get out of the way. And it goes to say that in so many ways of life. And martial arts is probably pretty guided in that too, where you have moments that are like, wow, okay, I see that. And I now understand how something that didn't make sense before suddenly now does and has purpose.
Well, and what you say really, Rochelle, really is integral to how we exist as human beings nowadays. We tend to be very isolated. And even though we're the most connected we've ever been through social media and, vehicles like this, we're doing this on StreamYard, we're also sometimes the most disconnected. And, just like you have the keyboard warriors, right, that would type out something disparaging to someone who they're not seeing directly, which they probably never say to somebody if they were face to face. And the story you were sharing, your personal experience, reminded me of a story, and I think it's a Stephen Covey story, but I may be incorrect. But whoever it was tells about them being they're on a subway, and it's been a long day, and they just want to relax and read their newspaper. And this man comes onto the onto the train with 3 kids, and he sits down, and the kids are they're wild. They're spinning on the poles. They're jumping on seats. They're jumping on each other. And all the people around him are getting very irritated. So after a while, he comes up to him and he says, "Excuse me, sir, would you please control your children? You're bothering everyone here on the train." And the man looks up with him with somewhat glassy eyes and says, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know that was happening. We just left the hospital where their mother died." Right?
Mm.
And so instantly it switches, right? Because we always think that when things are going toward us, we personalize it, but we don't know what's happening from the other perspective. So anyway, I think that's a good rule of thumb, even from a self-defense standpoint, right? Is if you have the opportunity to de-escalate a situation, be empathetic with someone, listen. I found in years of owning a business and having customer service opportunities that many times if a student, or mostly a parent of a student, came and had something that they were upset about, rather than getting defensive or trying to do what I could to fix the situation in a harried state, I would just sit and listen. And oftentimes that's all people wanted, was just to have someone listen to them. And many times in those situations, I might say, "I'm sorry, Mrs. Jones, that policy with our school won't be changing," but I allowed them to speak and vent, and they'd go, "Okay." And that was it, right? It just de-escalated. Oh my gosh. But it was such a great lesson for me, not to be reactive in those situations.
And get your ego out of the way, because the first thing that you would want to do is to say, no, that's not right. My teaching methods are perfect and you're wrong. And that just escalates the whole thing. We're talking with Chris Natzke. He is a author. He is a speaker. He is a martial arts expert. And when we come back from this break, I want to talk about something that I think we've got all wrong. Because we want to do stuff, and we want to do stuff that will make us happy, because then when we do it, we'll have more things. And when we have more things, well, then we can be happy. I think we've got it all wrong. And I'd like Chris to explain it to us when we come back. We'll be right back. Stay with us, everybody. Are you looking for a powerful way to grow your brand while making a real difference? Well, Positive Talk is the perfect platform to align your message with inspiration, hope, and meaningful conversations. By sponsoring Positive Talk, your brand will reach an engaged audience that values positivity and connection. People who want to support companies that share their values. Take this opportunity to showcase your business in a space that uplifts, inspires, and creates lasting impact. Don't wait. Email me, Kevin@kmmedia.pro today to learn how you can partner with us and spread positivity while growing your brand. And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald and Michelle. And Chris Natzke is our guest. And Chris, I got to ask you, because this is something that is near and dear to my heart. And I learned this a long time ago. I heard it conceptually a long time ago. But living it and learning about it are two completely different things. We, as our society, we tend to want to do stuff. If we do stuff, then we're going to be successful at stuff because we did stuff. But if that really is fundamentally incorrect, isn't it? Explain how that's wrong.
Yeah, the way that I explain it, I was introduced to this concept many, many years ago. I can't remember actually where, but it's really proven to be true in my own life, and also the people that I coach and the students that I teach. So most of us live our lives, I believe, from a perspective of have, do, be. Have, do, be. When I have enough money, then I'll do the things I want to do and I'll be happy. When I have more time, then I'll do the things I said I'm going to do with my children. I'll be a better parent. When I have more customers or listeners, I'll do the expansion of my business and then I'll be successful. And those things on the outside are certainly important. And I'm not saying that having extrinsic goals are necessarily bad. I mean, I teach people how to do it. So I think there's some real value there. But many of us, even after we achieve something we've been striving for, we're still not inherently happy. It's still not bringing us the joy that we think it will. You've probably all had situations where you've really been striving for something, you finally attain it, and then you go, oh man, well now what, right? So I had a teacher tell me a long time ago that the people who have really got it going, the people that are really expansive in their personal and their professional lives, they turn those words around. So rather than looking at life from a perspective of have, do, be, they look at life from be, do, have, right? So if you want more, courage, if you want more abundance, if you want more joyful experience, whatever, start being that way. Choose to be that way, and how you show up in your personal and your professional life, then do the things that support that way of being, and then you can have what you want.
Mm.
So what it basically does is it gives us that power inside of our lives, regardless of the outside circumstances. So I had another teacher tell me once is that, the problem, what's happening isn't the problem. Our reaction to what's happening is the problem, right? It's how we're perceiving it, how we're taking it, if we're taking it personally, right? So think about that. We all have the ability to respond to situations. And if we are intentional in our way of being, the way that the rest of our life unfolds can be that much more satisfying and empowered.
That's Rochelle. What do you think? I think that's a beautiful way to be.
I think it's everything we've been talking about. When you touch into putting it backwards and how also the way things work for you, right? Because I want to know how much you have learned about energy when it comes to this work, because like you say, what you are is what you reflect, it's what you get back.
Yes.
So how has that kind of changed things for you too, like in your learning? How was that shift?
100%. It's not just martial arts, but also in the personal development, the spiritual work that I've done on myself throughout the past 4 or 5 decades, right? Is I am a firm believer in terms of what we put out into the world, both in not only in our actions, but also in our thoughts, is a tremendous indicator of what's going to be coming back to us. Right. And so if you ever doubt that, have you ever noticed someone who walks into a room, and if they come in with a very positive way of being, you can feel their energy and you want to be next to those people? Whereas someone who might walk into a room with a very negative energy and anger and resentment, you can feel that as well. And one of the things I oftentimes will tell my students is that think about this. Go into any room that you go into. I had a friend of mine told me that he does this all the time, is every time he walks through a doorway, he thinks about how he can make that room a better place when he leaves than when he arrived. And it's a little game that you can play, but I mean, sometimes just small things that we do with people we interact with, like calling them by name. One of the things I've been playing with for years, and it's so fun to do, is every time I go to the store and I'm checking out, or if I'm going out of a Costco or something like that, they'll all have their name tags on, right? And what I really, really attempt to do each and every time I'm there is when I'm checking out or when they're checking my receipt as I'm walking out the door, is I will call them and thank them by name. And people magically respond when you call them by name, right? And sometimes it's like, they're like going through their thing and they're scanning things, and all of a sudden I say, "How you doing, Jim?" And all of a sudden they like, "What are you saying?"
Where do I know you from?
Where's Jim?
It's such a fun thing to do. And if we do that, there's that old adage that people don't remember what you do, they remember how you make them feel. And I think there's just such power to that. And if we all did that, I mean, the whole theme of your show is positive talk, right? But if we were in that way and we became ambassadors for that kindness and that peace, just the ripple effect alone that we'd have on our planet is just amazing.
I got to tell you, and it's also, by the way, a corporate thing, because they recognize, I worked for the DoubleTree at one point, and they had a program. It was called STAR. It was Steps to Accent Recognition.
Okay.
So basically the program was, if you could learn through their credit card or through interaction what their name was, and then you called them by their name, you're no longer a stranger. You're no longer that waiter. You're now somebody that's got a personal relationship with that individual. And so that became a really, really big deal. And I don't want to tell you that I was manager of the quarter or the star manager of the quarter, but I won't say that. But
And when you do that, Kevin, like one of the things that we do in our martial art program, and I think this is what makes us unique. And there are other schools that do similar things, but for the last 20 years, we've been doing something here where, in fact, I just had a meeting last night where I have a new group of students getting ready to test for their black belt in December. And one of the things we do is they have a number of physical requirements they have to do in those 3-4 months. So, they have to do 4,000 push-ups and 4,000 crunches and spar 120 rounds and, all those physical things. And it's not easy. And we know it's not easy, but it's also very attainable. But what the piece that I love the most is not just the physical component, but the human and personal development component. So they have to do 400 random acts of kindness. And in the last however many years, we've created over 250,000 random acts of kindness here just in our Denver community. They have to eat clean for an entire week. So no processed foods, no sugar, no alcohol. Getting 10-year-olds off beer is tough, but I make it happen. And the other one that I absolutely love is they have to spend a 24-hour period, a full day, in what we call our days of empathy. So they have to choose either being blind or deaf mute or in a wheelchair. And they spend a 24-hour period navigating life in that way so that they can get a deeper sense of appreciation for people that are dealing with some sort of physical affliction. And what it does is it helps us. We were talked about that example, Rochelle, when you were, the guy who turned off into the hospital. Oftentimes we just get so self-consumed, we don't think about what's going on with others. But when we can look at life from an empathetic heart, now all of a sudden life changes, not only for us, but also the people we interact with.
If you can strive to be happy, that will help you to be kind, to be empathetic, to be understanding. And notice that all these are saying with be, not do.
Right. That's right.
And so if you can be all of these things, suddenly magically your world changes.
Yeah.
And everything about it changes. I learned that when I was driving a bus in Seattle for 12 years.
Right.
I don't know if everybody knows that bus drivers generally are not very happy doing what they do. Yeah. Because they make good money, but it's called the golden handcuffs. They don't like what they're doing, but they do it because that's what their wives demand of them to come home with a paycheck. Yeah. But if you can make that paradigm shift and be happy, you'll talk to people that may not have talked to anybody all day.
That's right.
You can smile at somebody and it may affect them. And I literally, because I drove an articulated bus, which was, I could 70 or 80 people could be on the bus at any one time. And depending upon my attitude, I could affect the attitude of the entire bus.
Right. That's right. I absolutely agree with that. And if I may indulge you a little story, it just came to mind as I was sharing about those days of empathy. When we first rolled out this program, like I said, 20 years ago, I had a young student. His name is Josh. And Josh had started with me when he was 4 years old as a little ninja. This little kid with big floppy red hair.
They're so cute.
Yeah, they are. And so now Josh stayed with me. He wasn't like the best athlete, but he just kept showing up. And now 6 years have gone by and he's getting ready to test at 10 years old for his junior black belt. So we have our meeting. We're talking about these days of empathy. And he gets all excited. And he knows exactly what he's going to do. He's going to spend a 24-hour day in the wheelchair. And he's doing it because he's inspired and he's going to do it for his Uncle Jimmy. His Uncle Jimmy is a Vietnam vet. And for Josh's entire life, all he's known is Uncle Jimmy to be in the wheelchair as a paraplegic, right? So anyway, Josh gets all inspired. He calls up his uncle afterwards, the black belt. And he says, Uncle Jimmy, I'm so excited. I'm testing for my black belt. I have to do a day of empathy, and I'm going to spend a day of empathy in a wheelchair in honor of you. And Jimmy says, you know what, partner? That is awesome. Except for one thing. He goes, I know you way too well. If you do one day in the chair, all you're going to do is pop wheelies down the street. I know you too well. He goes, if we're going to do this and you're going to do this, we're going to do this right. And he goes, you're going to spend 2 days in the chair. And so on the second day, Uncle Jimmy drives up Josh's driveway in his customized van, lowers the hydraulic lift, and Josh gets, wheels on and gets in the back seat. His dad gets in the front seat. And Uncle Jimmy takes him to Craig Hospital here in Denver, which is one of the top spinal cord injury rehabilitation centers in the Western United States. So anyway, Josh goes to the rehabilitation ward and he sees a man who's a new quadriplegic, can't move his arms or his legs, and he's breathing through a tube in order to move his chair. So as you might imagine, Josh is pretty impacted by this, and he goes home and he writes an essay on it that he's supposed to give to me. But before he gives it to me, he sends it to Uncle Jimmy. And Uncle Jimmy reads it and he goes, wow, this is really good. And he sends it into the headquarters of the Disabled American Veterans Association. Well, they read it and they go, wow, this is amazing. And they publish it on the front page of their national newsletter. But then someone says, wait, this kid is from Denver. We're having our national conference in Denver this year. Let's have him speak. So, 3-4 months later, there's Josh in front of 250 disabled American veterans reading his essay. So at 10 years old, he not only was a junior black belt, but he was a published author and a keynote speaker. Right? Not bad.
Oh.
So great is a couple of years ago, I'm still close with the family, and they'll, sometimes invite me over for dinner. And so I was at their house and Josh was there, and now he's in his mid to late 20s. And he talked about that experience, and he talked about it as if it happened yesterday and how impactful it was in his life. So I love sharing that story. I still get goosebumps when I tell it, because we don't realize the impact that things like that can have on us, as well as the impact that, our kindness and those acts can have on other people.
And that is so true. That's so right on. Thank you, Chris, for telling that story. And we're talking with Chris Natzke, right?
Yes, sir.
And we need to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about his book and his writings and his speaking and all the things he does, because he's being happy and he's being kind and he's being intelligent and he's doing all these being things, which has given him in his life a lot of things that he'd like to have and to do the things that he'd like to do. It really is pretty remarkable. And again, I want to thank you for coming. This is a really, really cool episode. And we will be, Rochelle, will we be right back, do you think?
Yes, gosh, just be patient. It's only 1:10.
That's so good. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald and Rochelle. Chris Natzke is here. And, I got to tell you, Chris, I watched that commercial and I think to myself, if we had if we could be more empathetic, if we could be more kind, if we could be a better countryman to our country, then we can eliminate a lot of, 4 million people that are homeless or hungry is a horrific statistic.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that we're really interested here is promoting kindness. And by the way, and I say this because we're going to play this in a little bit, Chris, confirm this for me. Kindness is not weakness, oh, Mr. 8th degree black belt.
No, kindness is strength. And in fact, it sometimes takes courage to demonstrate that kindness, right? Sometimes it takes getting out of our comfort zone, not only to ask someone if they're in need of help, but also when we're in need, it takes courage. But I've always felt that this is really a powerful thing to consider, is that if you look at languages like French and Spanish, do you know what the word coeur means in French? It means heart. So courage is coming from our heart.
It's your core.
Yeah, right, exactly. Coeur or corazón in Spanish, right? So courage is coming from our heart.
That, Chris, I hate to say this, but there are lots of people in this country who have no idea what you just said. Would you repeat that, please?
Yes. So the root of the word courage is heart. From Romantic languages. And so when you are demonstrating courage, you are demonstrating something coming from your heart. And we oftentimes connote it to bravery, which is also another definition of that. But it takes courage to allow yourself to be vulnerable enough to either ask for help or to provide help for someone. There's oodles of studies out there where they see people on the street, someone's in need, right? And they walk right by them. Right? Because they're busy, they're on their way, they're doing their thing. I think there was even something where they went to a Bible college, and they made the students, they had a very short period of time to walk across campus to get to their next class, and they purposely put someone that was like lying in need of help right on their path, and 80-90% of them walked right over them. Right? It's kind of like the Good Samaritan story, right? Because they were so intentional on what they needed to do that they weren't living the golden rule, right? And I'm not saying I always do it, and we're probably not saying we all each do it, but it's when we have an awareness of it. Awareness, let's face it, is the first step in transformation. So when we slow down enough and we begin to be intentional about how we want to live and how we want to show up in the world, trust me, we will start seeing opportunities. It's kind of like, when you buy a new car and all of a sudden you start seeing the same make and model all over the place, where you didn't see them before. When you start getting intentional about being an agent, if you will, for kindness, an ambassador for kindness and opportunities for helping people out, you will see plenty of opportunities to do that.
It's harder to look around and not do that than it is to look around and to see what's available to you and how you can be that person. And that can be something as simple as you were talking about the cashier. It could be as simple as the customer that was in front of you was disrespectful or mean to the cashier. That poor person has been on their feet for 7, 8, 9, 10 hours. And suddenly they're taking abuse from somebody. You can give them a kind word. Just say, I'm so sorry that person was being that way, but you're doing a great job, and just keep it up.
Yeah.
That doesn't cost a dang thing.
Anything. Doesn't cost anything. And what we don't always understand is we oftentimes think that the transference of that energy stops at that interaction. But it's been proven that what happens, in fact, there was a study that was done years ago. And what it did is it read serotonin and dopamine levels, which rise when we receive something that makes us feel good. Those attributes, those hormones in our body, they move upward. And so, of course, they studied people who were the recipients of acts of kindness. And they saw that those dopamine and serotonin levels rose, which we'd all agree, of course, that's what happens. But then what they did is they also did the same readings on people that were giving those acts of kindness. And they found that those dopamine and serotonin levels rose by the same amount. But here's where it got really interesting. They started measuring the people who observed those acts of kindness that weren't involved in those interactions, and their dopamine and serotonin levels rose by the same amount. So we talk about, if you want to be contagious in a good way, start doing that, because you never know how that interaction will help that person that may do it and pass it along. And also the people that were observing it may also be positively impacted.
And I'd like to send it one level further, and that is somebody that has experienced an act of kindness for themselves. Their levels rise, but then they go home, and if they had not experienced that and had experienced something negative, they might kick the dog, yell at the husband, put the kids in their room, rather than being kind to them. And so the ripple effect and is undeniable, and it's like a pebble in a pond.
Right.
It just keeps on going.
Absolutely.
And that's what's really exciting about life, in my opinion.
I would absolutely agree. And that in and of itself, that's one of the things I'm always telling my martial arts students is, you want to talk about empowerment. You want to talk about being a powerful human. It's not just about being able to, kick someone in the head and look really good doing it. That's not what it's about. It's about having those personal attributes that you're able to have that positive impact in the world. I always tell my students, if I go to, say, your teacher in school and I meet them for the first time and they didn't know that you were a martial artist, and then I spill the beans and I say, yeah, they're my martial arts student, and I want them to say, oh my gosh, so that's what's so unique about him. That's what makes her so, she's always helping people. She always is courteous. That's what we want, is we want martial arts to be a metaphor for life. Otherwise, it's just kind of fancy street fighting, and it has to be more than that. And that's what I found in all my years of training. And the reason that black belts would stay with me is they didn't, martial arts, like any activity, repetition can get old after a while. But if you have a component where you're growing as a human being, now it becomes interesting. And when you're in a community of other people that are doing that as well, I always said that people come for the benefits they think they'll get and they will receive, but they stay in a martial arts school, for instance, because of the community, because that positive aspect that we're teaching, it infiltrates everything. And that's why I one time had a mom tell you guys, this is a real quick story. Their son had trained with me since he was quite young. He's now a teenager. He's in high school. He got his 3rd degree black belt with me. He'd done great things, and he wanted to move on and do some other things. And I said, Barbara, it's fine, because she'd become a friend of mine after all these years, but she's in my office crying that he's leaving. And I said, what's wrong? She goes, I don't want to leave here. It's such a great place, So anyway, that was one of the best compliments she could have ever given me, right?
Yeah. It is remarkable. There are two things that I think children should be exposed to. One is improvisational drama, and the other one is martial arts.
Yeah,
because it'll teach, both of them will teach discipline, self-confidence, and that will be very useful for them as they go through life.
I think it's awesome. I think what you're saying is as spot on, because, we also know that not only from our physical well-being and the energy that we project is important, but also our ability to communicate, as well as communicate and think fast on our feet, are incredible skills to develop. So I'm 100% with you. I think it's great.
Yeah.
And so I hope everybody in the country and find a good, reputable drama instructor and a martial arts instructor. When we come back from this break, it would be great, Chris, if you could give some of our parents that are listening out there some guidelines on finding a really good school versus, because they're like everything else. It's like the Wizard of Oz. There's good witches and there's bad witches.
Yeah.
And we want people to find good witches. Brachelle, shall we go to break?
Yes, let's do it. And then towards the end of the show, after you explain this, Chris, I think that I have come up with a movement we need to try to start.
Right. Okay, let's talk about it.
Oh, very good. And we'll be right back. Stay with us. And please, this piece is in line with what we've been talking about. So please listen to it and see what you think. The strength of staying kind from your friends at Positive Talk Radio. Kindness is not weakness. It takes real strength to stay kind in a world that often rewards anger, ego, and control. Being kind means choosing to act from your values, not your wounds. It means showing grace even when no one's watching. But kindness doesn't mean being passive. It doesn't mean letting people take advantage of your time, your energy, or your peace. You can be kind and still say no. You have a soft heart with firm boundaries. The strongest people I know are the ones who choose compassion without losing themselves. They've been hurt. They've been tested. And still, they choose to love and lead and to lift others anyway. Kindness is not about pleasing everybody. It's about honoring who you are and how you treat others, even when it's hard. So stay kind, stay human, and stay strong. And always remember this, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got. And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald, Rochelle, and Chris Natzke is here. And Chris, what did you think of that piece?
Oh my gosh, I was like, what was this, some kind of a setup, that last segment? What were we talking about?
I'm not saying. But it for me, it is, number one, it makes me feel better if I can be kind to people. And also, that's, in my mind, that's the universal expectation. And my spiritual belief is that is being of service to other people is the highest form of service that we can have to each other.
I absolutely agree. And, it said it in that advertising, and we've also talked about it, but I just want to reiterate this. Kindness, being kind toward others, being compassionate is not weakness. It is strength. In fact, I'll just give you this example from my own martial art career. I've been doing this for over 5 decades. And some of the most proficient and quote unquote dangerous martial artists I've ever been around are some of the most centered, humbled, and kind people you'd ever want to meet. Right? It's generally the ones who have those insecurities that maybe come across aggressive or irritable or whatever, but the people that really have this inner strength. And it was said in the Bible that there's a quotation that the meek will inherit the earth. And many times in our society, that passage is thought of as that meek is someone who is very weak and quiet, and they're not confident. But if you look at the Greek meaning of the word meek, it's someone who has great power but chooses to temper it. So that, to me, is what resonates. That's how I want to show up, is having great power inside of myself and be able to handle myself if I need to, but be able to show up as a kind, loving, and compassionate human being.
Can you really kick somebody in the head without ripping up your hamstring?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I've made a living of it.
Well, I would be in the wheelchair that we were talking about earlier.
It's like my instructor, one of my instructors always says, and I say this in my keynote talk as well, is, Kevin, anyone can do the splits once. So just remember that.
Yes, I know, but my problem is it would stay that way for permanently. So, but Rochelle, I got to ask you, and then we'll go and talk about the movement you want to create. I'm really excited about talking about that.
This whole conversation, I'm thinking we need name tag day. We need name tag day. If not that, let's start a vote. Fine, you can have another option. Everybody loves having an option. The other one would be empathy day.
Yeah.
And maybe why not even both? Because, do you know how much that would change to instill in a home with children?
Yeah.
You hear of all these moments and all of these stories that we have through people we talk to every single day across the entire world. And there's always something that happened. There's always a moment where they realized that they could have less than they do and they see what they have, or they also realize they can have more and they're worth that. And I think both of those things play a part. We start to pay attention to each other if we have our name tags on. And maybe I'll be the person to try to start that. I'll walk around with my skating jacket that already says Rochelle everywhere I go. And I love that you brought in that practice, but the empathy thing is huge because we lose track in those things, and it only really takes that one time though to like bring you full circle and be like, oh wow, okay. And when you start to see those things, the other thing you mentioned is how the universe will literally put you in positions to be that person. It'll be
100%.
like, okay, yeah, you know what, we need you right here right now. I used
right.
to always think, why am I always the person that's right there that experiences the entire accident, but I'm the last person talked to? Why why am I in situations like yesterday? I was driving down the street. I just gotten what I need to, and I know I was on a time schedule I had set for myself, and all these things went through my head. That whole list I had set for myself that morning went through my head. And what happens? There's a dog running around, and I can't not pay attention to that. Like, come on, it's a dog. So I pull over on the side of the road and I call the dog, and it comes running over to me, and I'm grabbing the name tag. I'm trying to call the number, and I don't know what to do. And for a minute I felt powerless. I'm like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do? Now I'm wasting time. I don't know what to do with this dog. Other people were also paying attention to now me with the dog. And for a moment I was just like, like, universe, help me here. Like, do I just start going up to the doors? And I shut my door and I said, I'm going to just try to give it a minute to do something that I can. And I shut my door, and this old guy comes walking out of his garage. And he's like looking at me kind of weird because I'm holding his dog. And
Okay.
and I told him, I was like, is this your puppy? And he was like, oh yes, that's my dog. He said, I didn't hear him for a minute, and I closed the garage, and then I couldn't find him. I said, no, he's out here. He's waiting for you to let him back in. And I noticed he had an abscess on him. And I just thought, if I hadn't been the person to stop and take that 5 seconds to just, what power do I have and how can I help right now? It was all just only him there with his dog. He said that he was alone, and that's how he knew, is because he couldn't hear the dog. So it's just one of those things, like, stop and pay attention, and just be kind to somebody. It doesn't hurt you.
That's right.
And Chris, sometimes you are rewarded for doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Because Rochelle, one of the things she had to do yesterday, because she lost her driver's license, is to get a new driver's license. And you have to go to the DMV, which is an multi-hour endeavor. And you're there for number 12, please. And you're number 48. And it's like, oh boy, I'm going to be here forever. How long were you at the DMV yesterday?
I was inside the building for less than 20 minutes from the time of doing the application, taking my picture, getting it printed, and paying $20. And I do believe it is completely because I woke up that morning and didn't decide to go online and stress out about everybody saying, oh, you just do it online, because I don't want to do that. And I just woke up and I said, this is going to work. And however long I have to wait, I'm willing to do it. And I got out of bed and I drove there straight out of bed, took a picture of my ID. And it was really just like a blessing story, because I've never heard of that happening to anybody without an appointment.
Nice.
And she was still wearing her pajamas, I come to find out.
My flippers.
So Chris, I gotta ask you, martial arts training, I think is it's a big deal for kids, but you need to find the right place.
Yes.
Can you give us some guidelines on finding the right facility for your child?
Absolutely. So, today, depending upon where you live, and I think anyone in a major city will probably have multiple options of martial arts schools to choose from. I mean, when I think about back in the day when I started, I started in a little town in Wisconsin, which had a community center program, but my instructor, master instructor, I had to drive 30 miles one way to train with him. So it wasn't like it is today where you have one in every corner. So that's a good thing. And what I do is I always tell people it is not the martial art per se, the martial art that you're looking to study. Like, I wouldn't say to you, you need to go find a Taekwondo school. That's not what I would say. You could go to a karate school, kung fu school, a jiu-jitsu school, any type of martial art. What you want to do, though, is first of all, you want to be able to make sure that you can observe a class without any pressure. Just observe a class. And then also have your child, I'm assuming this is for a parent with their child, be able to take a trial program, maybe for a week or two that they're doing the class. And what you want to watch there is that there is a healthy balance of discipline and fun, right? We often will say is there's a difference between having fun and being funny, right? So if you have a school, a martial arts instructor that relates well with the kids, a man or a woman or a teenager, a boy or girl, doesn't matter, and they're able to relate with a child and be able to connect with them, but at the same time, they do it in a way where there's structure and discipline in the class, that's the marriage you're looking for, right? Because you want the class experience to be a representation of what the attributes are going to be that your child's going to receive and the benefits, right? And also to make sure that when you go into a school, that you are going into a school where someone is really asking about your child and what you're looking to receive. I'll give you a quick story. Years ago, I had a single mom come in, Mrs. Brooks, with her son, Aaron, and he was about 9 years old at the time. And I did my school tour with her and I showed him everything and I gave him he said, well, I want to do my 1 week of lessons. And I did. And she goes, okay, I'm not signing up. I'm checking out other schools. And I said, that's quite all right, ma'am. In fact, I'll tell you what, these are the things I want you to look for, kind of like what I just shared with you. Well, about 2 weeks later, Mrs. Brooks came up with Aaron. It was right at my front door of the school and said, I'm ready. And I said, okay, let's go. And we went to do the paperwork and get him all registered. And she looked at me, she goes, I bet you're wondering why I came back. And I said, I was going to ask you that question. She said, well, I went to a number of schools and he did trials at all of them, but you were the only one to ask me about my son. When we first sat down with you, you said, tell me a little bit about Aaron. Is he shy? Is he outgoing? What is the main benefits you want to be in the program? All the rest of them were talking about all the degrees of black belt they had and the tournaments they had won and everything. She goes, you were the only one that asked me about my son. And that person stayed with me for almost 3 years before they left the program. So I share that story is make sure that when you're going in and looking for a school, that you feel a good connection, that it's a healthy environment for your child, but a balance of discipline as well as that they're going to have enjoyment in the program.
That is great advice. Great advice, Chris. And so if somebody wants to contact you.
Yes.
How do they do it?
Best thing is to go to my website. Go to www.chrisnatzke.com. That's CHRIS, N as in Navy, AT, Z as in zebra, KE.com. You can see all my coaching and speaking programs right there. And I have a program actually coming up, Kevin, if I may. It's a men's coaching program that I'm going to be rolling out on September 18th. So it's right at the top of my website. If someone feels that is something they're interested in, they can schedule a 30-minute discovery call with me, and I'd love to have that conversation.
Perfect.
And is this a in-person class or is it remote?
It's done virtually, so people can do it from anywhere in the country. And I've done several iterations of this, and it's called the Breaking Through Coaching Program. So people come, I help them identify an area in their life, personal or professionally, where they want to have a breakthrough, and we come. It's a collaborative effort to really help everyone that's there. And I do personal one-on-one coaching with them as well to have a breakthrough in a 6-week period of time.
Everybody needs a coach.
Yes.
And you're going to be honest with people. And some coaches are not necessarily, but you're going to be honest because you're interested in getting the best results for them.
That's right. There's a very big difference between serving and pleasing. So I'm going to serve them. I'm not going to please them by telling them everything's great if it's not. And I'm also going to hold them capable to the things that they want to hold themselves capable to in their lives.
That's awesome. Rochelle, anything else before we go, dear?
Yes, thank you so much for doing this, Chris, for not only having a Zoom where you can learn some of these disciplines and work through something yourself, but for taking everything that you've learned and giving it back. Like me and Kevin believe that's the highest thing that we can do. And I think that the difference that it makes in these children is hopefully what's going to change this entire next few generations of the world,
Thank you.
of course.
And I just had a thought. Just because you're not a child anymore, that doesn't mean you can't figure out a better way to be. And if martial arts would be a great vehicle for you to do that, I highly encourage it. And you can get in shape at the same time. And who knows? But be kind. And Chris, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. You're going to have to come back.
Thanks, guys. I'd love
Thanks,
to.
Chris.
Take care.
And have a great day, everybody. Thank you for being part of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald, where stories inspire and voices remind us of what truly matters. May today's conversation give you hope, courage, and a reason to keep moving forward. And just remember, till next time, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got.